Hi, my name is Olivia and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to review The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. As always, this is going to be a completely spoiler-free discussion, so let's get into the video. This is a thriller that starts out with Ted and Lily meeting on a flight going from London to Boston. During this flight, they have a few drinks and begin sharing some rather intimate details about their own personal lives. Ted discusses his own failing marriage and brings up the fact that he caught his wife cheating on him. During this discussion, he brings up the fact that he could kill his wife for this, and things go a little too far after that. Ted and Lily begin plotting to murder his wife, and the story unfolds from there. I don't want to give too much away because I think it's better to go into this one knowing very, very little about the plot. Overall, this was a 2 out of 5 star read for me. It was disappointing, but not absolutely awful. I've definitely read some far worse thrillers out there. This was also my second time picking up a Peter Swanson book, and the first book that I read was Her Every Fear, which was a 3 out of 5 star read for me. So pretty meh as well. It didn't really wow me, and this one didn't either. I'm not sure if this is a product of Peter Swanson's writing style, and it's just not something that I'm going to mesh with, but I'm willing to give him at least one more chance in the future to win me over with a thriller. With The Kind Worth Killing in particular, I was originally drawn in by the very unique premise. The plot summary was surprisingly descriptive for a thriller. In most thrillers, you get maybe a paragraph, usually just an odd collection of sentences, and it doesn't really give you much insight into what actually unfolds in the book. In contrast, though, this book had multiple paragraphs and seemed to give away every aspect of the plot. Unfortunately, this initial assumption of mine turned out to be very, very true, and as the book progressed, I found that we weren't straying too far from the plot summary, and I didn't feel like there were any new plot points being introduced. As a result, it made this book feel like it was lacking structure, and it seemed to go around in circles without really accomplishing anything. This was one of the biggest reasons why The Kind Worth Killing failed miserably as a thriller for me. With thrillers, I expect to be kept in the dark and reading about mounting suspense as the book progresses. But when 95% of the plot is revealed on the back of the book, there's not much that can be kept from readers except for the very, very conclusion. Had the summary been a little bit more selective, I likely would have enjoyed this one more. Stemming from this, many of the twists and turns felt cheap and very predictable, especially far in advance of when they actually occurred within the book. I successfully and very accurately predicted almost every single twist and turn, pages and pages in advance. This caused the plot to read as very formulaic and predictable. It didn't really leave much to the reader's imagination, and it also didn't leave me wondering what was going to happen next. The setup for each twist was incredibly overemphasized and overdone, and it seemed like the author was overtly trying to point out hints and clues, but it was way too obvious within the context of the book. He may as well have created a light-up, flashing sign advertising every single clue that was revealed throughout the narrative, and it would have had a similar effect. Therefore, it's not surprising that I saw almost every single twist coming before it actually happens. Readers were also given far too much detail about the setup for each twist. We saw each character that was involved as they were planning to enact the twist, and it really killed the suspense for me. With that being said, the only twist or turn that caught me by surprise was at the very conclusion of the book. That was the only one that I didn't see coming, and it led to a bit of a shocking conclusion to an otherwise dull and somewhat boring book. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough to redeem an otherwise lackluster narrative. Moving on to the characters, there were some interesting disparities from one individual to the next. It seemed like some characters, like Lily, the female protagonist, were very well developed and three-dimensional, giving them realistic and lifelike qualities. But by comparison, our male protagonist Ted fell very, very flat. Most notably, he lacked character development and a character arc, and by the end of the book, I felt like I barely knew him, despite much of it being told from his perspective. This also made it challenging to connect with some of these characters and sympathize with the situations that they were thrown headfirst into. I was surprised by the stark contrast between some of these characters, because Swanson proved that he could write a very well-developed and very well-thought-out character, but he failed to do that for every single character in the book. So it left me confused and wanting more. On a similar note, the book was told from multiple perspectives, but each voice was so similar and so superimposable that it was really challenging to figure out who was narrating each section. This is a huge problem for me in books. I want to be able to tell the different narrators apart, and they should have distinct enough voices that that's fairly easy to do, but that was not the case in this book. To compound matters, Swanson also used multiple perspectives to describe the same exact scene to readers over and over again, and each different retelling didn't add much to the plot or to the substance of the book. This was a negative that I also picked up on in Her Every Fear, so it seems like it's a commonality in Swanson's writing style and not just something that's confined to a single book. This repetition happened far too often, and it was incredibly frustrating as a reader. It felt like Swanson didn't believe that I could keep facts straight over the course of 100 or 150 pages, and it definitely took away a lot of the suspense that otherwise could have been present. Lastly, I couldn't get past the writing style on this one. Swanson took a very dull, monotone narration approach for this book, and it failed very, very miserably for me. At times, it felt like a chore to get through even a single chapter in the book, and that's not something that should be happening in the middle of a thriller. This led to me not feeling invested whatsoever in the tale, and quite frankly, I could care less to what happened to any of the characters. This really put a damper on any moments that were supposed to be suspenseful and high action, and it certainly wasn't the recipe for an exciting, heart-pounding thriller. The plot was much more of a slow, painful burn, and for me, it didn't do the trick. That wraps up my review, so let me know in the comments down below if you've read this one and if you have any thoughts on it. Also, have you read any of Swanson's other books, and what did you think about those? Did you see some of the same issues arising in all of them, or did you enjoy certain ones more than others? I'd love to hear your comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.